I think the images here are speaking for themselves. Putin's refusal to come to negotiating table is exploding in his face. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Let's quickly talk about Ukrainians' today's strikes against Moscow. This was absolutely spectacular. I will try to maybe put videos in this part of the screen while I'm going to be talking to you. So what we're observing here is the consequences of one's actions coming to bite them back. The reality is Russians have been isolated from consequences of war for a very long time, mostly because Ukraine just didn't have the tools in their toolbox to reach them. They do now. And as we explained, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. But the main and the most important thing is to underscore that this is all happening because Russia invaded their neighbor. And while there is a lot of denial inside of Russia with regards to what is happening or why it's happening, the reality is that even the heart of Russia, that Putin is really trying to hide and protect from any kind of influence, is now directly expecting the sanctions from Ukraine to come flying any day now. We talked recently about the potential diplomatic solution, and I mentioned that Ukraine might have a trick up their sleeve to help nudge Russians into the right direction. Well, I think while the majority of Russians that you will find on the streets will clearly not link the two factors together, the people that are in charge, the oligarch, they know. They understand why their oil production storage facilities are being blown up. But let's look at what the Russians are saying, because I think it is beautiful. Obviously, the Z propagandists are crying all over the internet. Once again, I can make another video for over half an hour just talking about this. But let's read this one, because I think it kind of amalgamates everything that is wrong with Russia. So what he says: after today's attack on Moscow, I once again see many comments along the lines, so what, are we just going to swallow it again? When we will finally start fighting for real? Why are we sparing them? Yes, this is a very common narrative inside of Russia. Even the sort of not pro-war people, they are seeing that Russians are being struck, and they're like, oh, well, now we need to strike Ukraine. Completely missing the link that it is their actions that are causing this. It's Putin's decision every day to continue this war that is continuing Russians being exploded, and more of them will. And the idea that Russia will finally start fighting for real, this is an interesting delusion both in the Western world with regards to Russia starting to fight for real, but also in the Russian circles. In the Russian circles, it's more sort of like, well, we are the most strongest military because we have nuclear weapons. And essentially their logic is following the simple math which doesn't work. Russia has nuclear weapons, ... question mark, something, ... we win. So there is like no path from Russia just owning nuclear weapons to winning. It's just kind of like, assumed, oh, Russia's strong, therefore Russia win. But we've seen plenty of stronger powers starting wars that they cannot sustain and they cannot continue. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Who might I be thinking about? But the reality is Russia is not going to win this war. Russia does not have the conventional forces that will suddenly come and break the situation on the front line. And nuclear weapons do nothing for Russia in the current context. If Russia uses any type of nuclear weapons, it's going to bring more problems to Russia than benefits. Which leads us to the second part, which is the Western delusion that there's supposedly the second world's military somewhere there inside of Russia that Putin has not been using. The reality is it's not that. Putin has been throwing everything that there is on the ground, and the data facts for this is that missiles that are striking Ukraine right now have been produced like last month, and people have been finding these missile fragments, and they had the stamping dates. A lot of Russians that are being found dead on the front lines are being found that they just got conscripted. Putin has been doing a lot of conscription recently, and Russians and the Russian media and the opposition media and journalists have been tracking where do these people go. There is basically by now a mountain of facts stating that whatever Putin is having, he's just throwing everything at the front line just to see whether or not it will stick. And we're talking data, pure data only, facts, and not even discussing that the Russians are just lying to each other, that Putin is getting wrong reports. That all is just compounding those false facts. But because people do not really follow the war, they would say something like, well, Russia was winning for the 4 years and suddenly Ukraine is winning back. How did this happen? And it's not a surprise if you have been following this channel. But let's return to the Z propagandist. We're going to skip the next part, which is about nuclear weapons, and focus on the third section here. Beyond tactical nuclear weapons, there is no ability to deliver some crushing response this very minute. Because fighting for real is not about technical fixes, some wonder weapons, or pulling the entire arsenal into play. What that phrase really implies, first and foremost, is organizational decisions, personnel decisions. And our whole system is built on the idea that no personnel decisions and no organizational restructuring are needed. The same drone defense could long ago have been set up as a structure outside the Ministry of Defense, with the ability to use explosive warheads or anti-drones, not just kinetic interceptors, because now they still fall and explode anyway. In a functioning system, such a decision could be made at most a month. Here, people have already been talking about it for more than half a year. So what he talks about here is the issues within the Russian system, which is the main issue why Russia will never win. Russian system does not trust their society. Russian system, Putin, is very much afraid of losing his power. He's scared. So he surrounded himself with the man that he, quote unquote, trusts. He doesn't trust them. It's more sort of like a keyword for he knows what what vices they have and what vices drive them, and if they are, how dangerous they are to him. In that sense, he trusts them. And that's it. They will not get changed. We saw that happen with Prigozhin when he tried changing and it backfired significantly. Putin's afraid of the coup. And one of the showing of how exactly he's afraid, he's allowing his armed forces to use weapons inside of Russia with explosives. We're going to see some today with the missiles. But then the drones that are being used by the Russian, not sort of like volunteer militia units that are fighting Russian, Ukrainian drone incursions with their own interceptor drones, they are prohibited to use explosives in these drones because it is uncontrolled weapons in the hand of the masses. This is not something that Putin wants to allow. This is dangerous for him. And what additionally he underscores, that there is no desire to change. Russian system has not changed in 5 years. There have been smaller decisions, tactical decisions that have been done on like a smaller scale. There have been some big decisions with regards to building fortification line, mobilization, stuff like this. But nothing that would fundamentally alter the system. And Ukraine is adapting to fight specifically this system. And this system has fundamental weaknesses that cannot disappear unless the whole system is changed. And Putin will not change the system. And the Z propagandist claims exactly that, stating in the last part, most frightening of all is that after 4 years of war, our system of government has not changed. 6 months to a year for implementing changes may seem like a long time, but we had a full 4 years. Meanwhile, the Western neighbors sit there, watch our disorder, and get used to it. What are we going to do? Any thoughts? Comments? He asks into nothingness. Russians, after every achievement of Ukrainians to target weaknesses inside of the Russian system, start yelling that we need change. We need something different happening. And then a couple of hours later, we see the pattern of Russian security forces coming after these bloggers, and they start erasing their posts. And this was happening also this time. As soon as we saw explosions in Moscow, suddenly all of the Russian Z bloggers, Ukrainians so bad, when are we going to change? Putin bad. And then suddenly, everything deleted. I was like, well, it's like we just need to stick together and be strong. And suddenly they're taking a completely different tone. And I want to finish on this video specifically. This is the video in which we saw the Russian fuel tank explode and its lid flying high into the air. Firstly, because it is a tank, technically, as it was clearly stated by the comments to my post in the community section, then maybe we should consider this to be an honorable mention in the turret toss competition, maybe. So, but more importantly here is in this video, we actually saw a specific thing, and this is going to come as a little bit of a sad news for you. But unfortunately, this beautiful shot is not being achieved by the Ukrainian strikes. This beautiful shot is achieved by Russians' self-goal, so to say. Yes, you heard me right. It was actually the Russian missiles. If you saw some of the videos, they were flying like all the way past the drones themselves. And as we follow the Russian missile here, we see that when there is this tank explosion, we see that there is a Russian missile. You see the path that is right over there that actually strikes that tank and it explodes. So it was Russian friendly fire that exploded their own tank. I wish more Russians would just fight themselves instead of fighting Ukraine, but it is what it is. Everything that is happening to Russia is only the start. It's gonna get much, much worse for Russia, and the only way for them to stop it is to stop attacking Ukraine, get the hell out of Ukraine, and finally reflect on what you're doing. Guys, to finish off today, I would like to mention the friend of the channel's special auction for this flag of Ukraine signed by the ex-commander-in-chief Zaluzhny. He was the first man that underscored the importance of drones in this war. So please, if you are interested in this flag, follow the link to Rick's auction and support Rick the Ukrainian, and maybe get yourself this flag signed by Zaluzhny. Obviously, all of the proceeds will go to Ukrainian armed forces. Trust in Ukraine, support Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.